we'll call the meeting to order and we'll begin with the roll call.
Mr. Young,
Here.
Mr. Schaefer has requested an excuse. Ms. Lewis.
Here.
Ms. Hammoud,
Good morning here.
Dr. Carnell,
Here.
Chair Thomas,
Here.
Mr. Pinkins have requested an excuse. You have a quorum.
Well, the minutes of our last meeting were circulated. I hope everybody's had a chance to take a look at them. If you've had the opportunity to take a look at them, fine. If not, if you want a few extra minutes, we'll take that, and then we'll see if we can get a motion to approve those minutes.
Chairman?
Yes.
Given that they're rather brief, I'd make a motion at this time to approve the minutes as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? The minutes are approved. We'll go on to subsection C of the agenda, unfinished business. The update from the subcommittee regarding amendments to the ethics ordinance. We had our meeting a few days back and it ended up being truncated somewhat. I was a few minutes late and I apologize to everybody. And then we had one of the members that had to leave early. But the more pressing problem that we faced was the copy of the draft ethics ordinance that we had up on our computer screens at the meeting did not have the proposed changes in it and the underlines that Dr. Carnell and her group had put together. I really don't know what happened that day. So we weren't able to get very far. What we did was we made it up to page 5 and we went through all of the changes that Dr. Carnell's group had recommended. And for the most part, we approved those. I think, in fact, we approved all of them. And we're going to go through page by page. And I think we're getting into areas where we're going to be suggesting additional changes. So our last meeting wasn't that productive. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 14th. And we hope that meeting will allow us to make some good progress on the draft that Dr. Carnell provided. There's 3 areas that we're planning on getting into. The approach that we've decided to take was to go through the changes that were also already recommended, then go through changes that we want to suggest that are new, that aren't in that original draft. And then I think that one of the more pressing changes that we want to discuss, I think we plan to discuss it perhaps separately, is the whole concept of our group getting some type of investigative authority and perhaps even some type of investigative budget. We're not there yet. We're going to be getting into that. So Ms. Lewis, Mr. Schaefer is not here. Is there anything that you would like to add regarding our last meeting?
Not really. I think you summed it up pretty well.
Okay. Well, let me turn to Mr. Longstreet. Mr. Longstreet, anything I didn't cover from our last meeting? All right. Well, I think that with that report, you're up to date on what we've done and what we've not done and the problem we had. So unless anybody has any questions, we'll move on to item number 2 under unfinished business. All right, under unfinished business, I circulated an email today that all of us received after our May meeting. The email is dated June 3rd and it's from Ms. Spivey. And what Ms. Spivey did in her email is she alerted us to the fact that when we disposed of or attempted to dispose of 2 of the complaints that were before us at our May meeting, we may not have used the correct terminology. And I had a conversation with Mr. Longstreet about this yesterday. There's no doubt in my mind, there's no doubt in his mind that we intended to dismiss the complaints because they didn't have jurisdiction. how we came up with the terminology we came up with at the meeting, it's really irrelevant. I think that what we really want to do is revisit both matters and make a determination as to what we want to do to correct the language in accord with Ms. Spivey's request. And I believe from talking to Mr. Longstreet yesterday, and I'll stand corrected if I'm wrong, his recommendation has not changed, that the matters be disposed of because we don't have jurisdiction. And the language that we would use, if you look to little over halfway down Ms. Spivey's email, subparagraph, section 40-7, subsection E, subsection 6, contains five different areas that could result in a complaint being disposed of. And I believe that it is, we're going to need to vote on it, but I believe, and I'll let Mr. Longstreet address it, I believe that the language that we're going to adopt today would be dismissed for lack of jurisdiction over the subject matter. And I think if we did that, that would satisfy Ms. Spivey's request for clarification. So I'll throw it out for discussion or a motion. Anybody want to discuss it? If not, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Longstreet for him to give us his perspective on it.
My perspective on the subject matter is I think that the board didn't use the proper language. You did make a motion to dispose of and take it off the docket. Secondly, you made a motion to adopt my recommendation, which was to take no action to dismiss the complaint. But however, I believe the language should be at this point, and I'll continue to make sure that I use this language in the future, that this matter should be dismissed for lack of subject matter jurisdiction.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Longstreet? Well, does anybody have a motion that they want to make regarding item C2, complaint from Dwayne Williams? It would be literally, I think, in accord with his recommendation, just amending the language that we used.
Are we going to amend the language to say, or we just keeping it the same?
Yes, the language that we used at our May meeting was unsatisfactory to Ms. Spivey's office. I think that what she did was she literally asked us to pick which one of these subparagraphs we wanted to resolve the complaints under. And I believe that it is Mr. Longstreet's recommendation that we dismiss the complaints based upon subsection 40-7 E6 subparagraph small b.
May I address that?
I'm not sure I understood you.
We are not changing the recommendation. My recommendation remains the same, is that this board should dismiss the complaint and take no action. However, the language that you use to do that correction would be dismissed for lack of subject matter jurisdiction.
Okay.
Dismiss the complaint for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. It's a language that should be used from here and in the future. Yes.
So we're not changing that draft to reflect that language. Going forward, you're going to use that particular.
Yes, as of right now, there should be a motion placed on the floor to dismiss the complaint of Dwayne Williams for lack of subject matter jurisdiction, to correct the previous order or the previous motion on the record, which was to dismiss the complaint and take no action.
Okay.
We're just changing the language that's used, but I believe that the action that the board took was proper.
Okay.
I put a motion to adopt Mr. Longstreet's recommendation of dismissing
Thank you, Mr. Mood.
request for lack of jurisdiction of the subject matter.
Do we have a second for Ms. Hamoud's motion?
I'll
Second.
second it.
Okay, Ms. Lewis seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion's carried. Well, we could cut down on the discussion regarding subparagraph C3 because Ms. Spivey's office had the same problem with the language that we use. So essentially what we said was that we were going to close the file and take no action. And it is Mr. Longstreet's recommendation that we adopt the same language that we adopted for Mr. Williams' complaint to dispose of it. Mr. Longstreet, anything you want to add?
No, I just don't want to be sure that we're using the language that we're dismissing, that the board is dismissing the complaint for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. To make the record clear as to what is being dismissed and why.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Longstreet?
Just a clarification, I know like the subject matter, but also in this case, because Wayne Metro, it's not even like a person within our jurisdiction because they're not Wayne County employee or elected officer. We include that in the language. I mean, maybe one is sufficient, but I just. for the
Think-
record.
To be, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think to state lack of subject matter jurisdiction means that we don't have a subject over the person, the party, or the controversy.
Was that your motion? If it is, I'll support it to take the same action as we did in the previous matter.
And yes, I'll put a motion to adopt the attorney's recommendation to dismiss this for lack of jurisdiction.
Mr. Young, did you second it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving to our new business, unless anybody has any other old business that they want to talk about. Moving to new business, on page 2 of the agenda, we received a complaint from Reverend John W. Taylor. And as I understood his complaint, he's complaining regarding the service that he received at the jail, the Wayne County Jail, regarding his desire to get on a list so that he could visit prisoners. I'll open the floor for discussion regarding his complaint. Item number D1 on the top of page 2 of the agenda.
Question, did we have a recommendation from the attorney on this complaint?
I believe we do.
We do. Again,
Can we hear it?
sure. My recommendation on this particular complaint is that Mr. Taylor is a volunteer minister at the Wayne County Jail. He was required to fill out a security clearance. This particular security clearance required that they abide by certain provisions, laws, and or Michigan state statutes. One of the statutes within the security clearance form was not clear as to what Mr. Taylor would be agreeing to. His complaint is requesting that the ethics board direct the Wayne County Sheriff's Department to allow him or to explain all these items to him. I don't think it's within the purview of the Wayne County Ethics Board to tell the Wayne County Sheriff's Department and or the Wayne County Jail how they should implement their practices and procedures. It goes outside the scope of the Wayne County Ethics Board's authority. And again, I believe my recommendation at this time would be to dismiss this complaint for lack of subject matter jurisdiction, as we have no power to provide or to tell the Wayne County Sheriff's Department how to implement their practices and procedures.
I would also add, Ms. Samud, I just received it this morning. I hope you have his written recommendation. You know, Mr. Longstreet, he and I talked about this yesterday. One of the things that struck me about the Reverend's complaint was that he essentially, in paragraph 4 of his complaint, asked that we direct the individuals in charge of the jail to move forward on this issue without making any changes to the required clearance form. To me, that just doesn't make any sense. I really believe that the Reverend probably doesn't have a good idea regarding what we do, what we can do, and what we can't do. Unless anybody has any questions for Mr. Longstreet or wants to engage in any further discussion, I would ask if there's a motion on the floor regarding his recommendation. Yes.
We have had these kind of situations come up once in a while where clearly Mr. Longstreet is right. There's no jurisdiction of the Wayne County Ethics Board, and summarily dismiss it and move on. And yet at the same time, as you know, or at least as some of the other members recall, there's times when these things come up where you look at this and you say, these are good things. I mean, at least the Reverend is trying to do something good in a difficult set of circumstances. And you sort of just as a human being wish these things could get worked out. Now, we can't order that to happen. We don't have jurisdiction and don't want to have jurisdiction. We don't know what the process is, and that certainly takes a lot of years of experience, a lot of training, and there's very good, competent people that run all of those offices, and I have the utmost faith in all of them. Yet, I think it's natural for some of us to wish that these things could get resolved in some way. But apparently there's a reason why they didn't. Maybe there's other issues or matters that we don't know about. It's rare, and I know I'm off the rails a little bit on this, but we've had other times when we've wanted to get involved, when we thought things were being done that were good. We thought we could make a difference, but given the limited jurisdiction that we have and given what we can do, we certainly have to recognize that although you wish it could get worked out or something could be resolved, it's certainly not something that belongs in this body. And I hope that they get this worked out in some form. I mean, if it's appropriate, and if it's good for everybody. Apparently this guy's been there for a long time. And I just wanted to say that because it's just what I was thinking about when I was reading.
Well, I will tell you, I feel the same way about some of the complaints that we receive. I remember one in particular where an individual filed a complaint regarding her treatment during a divorce case by a sheriff's department employee. And she was actually charged and put in jail. And we had the complaint before us and we sort of didn't know what to do with it. We felt so bad for the plight that the woman found herself in, that what we did was, I'm going from memory, I believe we had Mr. Williams do a letter to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office expressing concern over her treatment and saying essentially, we don't have jurisdiction to do anything about it, but this came before us and we're all worried about it. And that was a unanimous vote that we had. And I would add that about 6 months later, that Wayne County Sheriff's deputy ended up being charged by the prosecutor's office. Now, whether they had been investigating that matter independently before they received a complaint from us or not, I don't know. But the ethics code specifically allows us to make that type of referral to the prosecutor's office. I just don't know what we would be able to do in this case. Do you have any ideas, Mr. Young?
No, I guess sometimes, setting out a problem without any proposed solution can be a waste of time. And that's sort of what I did here. I don't have any suggestions. I'm not suggesting that there's any criminal activity. I just see a situation where somebody's charitable in nature, both with his time and his commitment and his caring for people. And he's doing something that I don't want to do. And there's a lot of situations out there where people are spending their time and I just wanted to bring it up. I just wanted to recognize it. Over the years, I've always been sort of very, very advocating for strict construction of this ordinance that we have. I didn't want to go off the rails and get involved in things that are not promulgated by the ordinance and to stay in our lane. I mean, I've always said that, and here I go on this one. I don't have, nor do I suggest, nor do I want to say we're going to take action on this or should take action. I just wanted to point it out that there are times when things move us as people, and this is one that we just wish it could get worked out. It's just we don't have the authority or the power to do it.
Well, you know what I would like to ask Mr. Longstreet? We're voting today, if we adopted your recommendation regarding this complaint, we would be voting to dismiss 3 complaints because we don't have subject matter jurisdiction. I think what I would wonder and what may address at least a portion of Mr. Young's concern is, what are we going to say in these letters? In the letter to the Reverend, he's a good guy. He's trying hard to help people. Seems like his heart is in the right place. Seems like there's some roadblocks to what he wants to do. In the letter that would go to him, I know that it would have to say dismissed for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. I understand that. But would we have the ability to, I don't know about use the word commend him, but say, look, we think what you're doing is very good, but explain a little bit more that, you know, we understand his situation, but there's just nothing that we could do about it. Are these just 1 or 2 line letters that would go out?
I'll send out whatever letter that the board would think is appropriate to send to Mr. Taylor. So if the board believes that that he I guess trying to figure out the right word to use, but I would think if you wanted to commend him in a letter, that you could tell him that we do appreciate his complaints. We do have an understanding of what the issue is, that we could send a friendly letter to the Wayne County Sheriff's Department addressing his particular issues. However, at this time, we lack subject matter jurisdiction over the issue. It's not an issue that we can deal with. However, we can send a friendly letter to the Wayne County Sheriff's Department saying this is an issue and concern of a concerned citizen who is a reverend at a church who's giving the Wayne County Jail charitable time and commitments, that his time and commitment should be appreciated, and how you might want to address his concern for future persons who also want to be as charitable as Mr. Taylor.
And we would state in it, would it be part of that recommendation that we clearly state in that letter that we dismissed it because we don't have subject matter jurisdiction, and then go on, but sort of a paragraph?
Yes.
Mr. Young, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Hammoud.
I have a recommendation to send the letter instead of just the reverend, but to the sheriff's office to see, I mean, when I read this complaint, I mean, the 2 items that the reverends are mentioning, they're available online. So if he has access online, they can give him the address where he can find them, or they can print copy, and at least we don't have jurisdiction. And I know this one is not just for jurisdiction. Actually, we do have jurisdiction if there was a violation, but on the subject matter, like we couldn't establish that there is violation of ethics. So, but we can have a recommendation to the sheriff to either direct the reverend to either go online if he has access. If not, they can print that and provide it to him. I mean, it's available, it's public record.
I don't know. Dr. Carnell and Mr. Young have been on the board, and Ms. Hammoud have been on the board longer than me. Have we done something like that in the past? I honestly don't recall it. I remember the situation involving the prosecutor's office, but I don't remember doing anything like this. But what you're saying, it just makes such common sense. Ms. Hammoud?
I mean, I know it's not within our jurisdiction to tell them how to operate. It's just our recommendation. And although we can't force them, I think we owe the sheriff to say, hey, this complaint came in, let them know and give them a recommendation. That would be my suggestion.
Buddy, Ms. Lewis?
Yes, I would definitely agree with Mrs. Hammoud about letting the sheriff know about this complaint. But I also had a question for Mr. Longstreet. As far as this complaint, I know we know here that it's about the form, but he also stated being bound to the terms. Was he specific in the terms that he was being bound to? Did he feel that they were violating his?
Yes, in the second paragraph, he talks about being bound or being agreed to or agreeing to particular provisions that haven't been explained to him. That's mentioned in the second paragraph of the complaint.
Okay, so we send something to the sheriff's office to say that you just need clarity. I guess he doesn't understand the process, so it may just
I think it would be pertinent if the Wayne County Ethics Board sent a friendly suggestion to the Wayne County Sheriff's Department that you have this complaint by this person who's spending his quality time with the Wayne County jail with the inmates. He's providing a community service to the Wayne County jail, that he has concerns in regards to security provisions as he's being forced to agree to, however, without being explained. I think it would be pertinent that the Wayne County Sheriff provide this information to them so they fully understand what they're agreeing to. Although we cannot force you to do anything, it's a friendly suggestion that best practices suggest that you provide this information to all people who are agreeing to the term, all terms, so they understand what they're agreeing to and what they're not agreeing to.
You have a motion on the floor, Ms.
I'm
Hamud?
gonna put a motion to dismiss Mr. Taylor complaint for failure to properly establish a violation of Wayne County Ethics Ordinance. So adopting Mr. Longstreet's recommendation.
Could you tell her your recommendation again, the language under the code?
My recommendation would be to dismiss Mr. Taylor's complaint for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. But I think it would also be pertinent, I think, as a part of the motion that the board could ask that a friendly letter be sent to the Wayne County Sheriff's Department making suggestions as to, I think that could be a part of the motion as well.
Okay,
That included in your motion?
I'm
Ms.
gonna
Hamud?
amend my motion to provide the recommendation to the sheriff.
Do we have a second for that motion, or do you want discussion?
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There is a
Aye.
question that I have, Mr. Longstreet, and that is that generally, and I'm just going generally, I've already said here today, there's more senior members on this board than myself. In the past, when we've talked about letters going out, some type of custom letter going out from our council, what we've done is we've had them reviewed by perhaps the chair and even the member that made the motion. And in this situation, we know you'll do a good job on the letter. We trust you implicitly and explicitly, but I don't know that there needs to be a motion, but I would like to have that letter reviewed by Ms. Hamud. And since I'm acting in the place of Mr. Pinkins, I'd like the opportunity to review that. And then if we have questions about it, we could circulate it to everybody. We want to get full agreement on what we're saying in the letter. I think the letter to the Reverend could be a very brief letter. We're dismissing it for these reasons. We don't have the ability to investigate this. But we do want you to know that we're sending a letter today to the Sheriff's Department, and we're enclosing a copy of it. That's how I would see these two letters going out. So a letter to the Reverend, letting him know we're writing to the Sheriff's Department, letting him know that we can't become involved, and then a letter to the Sheriff. And if you circulate those to Ms. Hamud and myself, we'll give you approval on them unless we have questions, and then we'll submit them to everybody on the board if we have concerns.
That's actually standard procedure, that I write a letter, it's sent to the chair for approval. Once it's approved, then I send it out.
All right. We all in agreement on
Yes.
on that complaint? All right. Well, then we move on to subparagraph C, capital E, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the board. Does anybody have any other matters that they want submitted to the board they want to discuss today? Any questions regarding the subcommittee's work or anything that we've done here today? Any hands going up? I presume then that we get to move on to subsection CF, public comments. Do we have any public comments that we have to address?
For the record, we did not receive any comments via email, and I will ask all lines to unmute on Zoom.
I have a comment. This is Felicia Johnson, the attorney for the county commission.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
I can. Can everybody hear her? Yes, I believe we can hear you.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to clarify something that was said earlier in the meeting. So with regards to commission staff, we are obviously here to assist and support the ethics board. The issue from the last meeting with regards to the wording of those motions, we were not suggesting that you have to select an item within the ordinance and specifically include that in your motions, though we do think that that is probably best practice and a good idea. We simply weren't clear on the action because at the last meeting, the action was take no action. It wasn't clear that you were actually dismissing the complaints. So we were actually just looking for clarification on what was being done and not necessarily telling you exactly how to do what you wanted to do. So I just wanted to clarify that. It's obviously within the discretion of this body to determine how you do things. We just weren't clear on what actually occurred and how to proceed procedurally because the motions at the last meeting were simply take no action. It wasn't to dismiss, and that wasn't clear to us. So we do appreciate the clarification today. And I just wanted to state that for the record. Thank you.
Oh, I'd like to thank you very much for your help on it. I'd like to thank you for the email that you sent us on June 3rd. And just, I'm pleased to hear that we, according to what you've just said, we've resolved the issue raised in your email. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, very good. Anybody have any comments or questions to raise? That leaves us with, there's no public comments. That leaves us with adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.